So hello everyone, my name is Mark Hummel. This is Mark Hummel's Harmonica Party podcast 30-something. And I'm here with Lee Oskar, my friend for quite a few years, and he is one of the founding members of the band War. It was an early inspiration for me as a teenager playing the harmonica. When I heard you guys in 1970, it changed my world. You guys and Jay Giles' band were the only bands I heard on the radio that featured harmonica.
And Stevie Wonder too. Right?
Stevie Wonder, but I'm saying for diatonic harmonica,
gotcha.
You guys were the guys. Yeah. And so I am thrilled to have you doing this. You've got a great story. I've known you long enough, and we've done enough work together that I've learned a lot about you as a person and as a musician. And I remember when I first met you, I thought, who is this pretentious artiste?
Really?
Yeah.
I was being pretentious?
Yeah, I thought so, but it was
I don't think I've changed. So
well, the thing is,
I don't think I ever. What made you think I was pretentious? I'm just curious.
I mean, I'm being honest with you.
No, I want you to
It
be
was
honest.
like, I mean, the funny thing was,
Good.
you were opinionated, and I'm very opinionated.
Oh, yeah.
As you know, we're both very opinionated.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like, I think you were sharing your opinions, and I think, you know what it was you probably said something about blues that struck me a certain way, and I probably got offended or something.
Probably.
But I mean, over the years, it was like, within, I want to say probably, a month or two, we became friends, and we started working together a lot. I want to say that was at least
but something else
20-something years ago, if not more. I think it was 1996. That's when it was. It was 1996.
Yeah, time flies. But
yep.
I remember when you first time you had it, you wanted a headshot. Black
Of
and white.
you?
Yeah, headshot, because that's what was required for clubs and all that. I don't remember where we kind of bumped heads. And the way
I'm used to bumping heads.
But I can talk about you too, right?
Right, exactly.
Okay. We'll share stories, and
the bottom line is I have come to greatly respect you.
Thank you.
And a lot of it has to do with, several things. One is you are very musically adventurous, probably one of the most musically adventurous, and you're somebody that's really had a huge influence on the harmonica world, both as a player and also because of your harmonica company, which is the second largest in the world, Lee Oskar Harmonicas. And the other thing is, I just feel like you constantly are kind of pushing yourself in terms of where you go with your music. And you're a great painter. You're also a great painter. A lot of people don't know that. But you have many talents. And the other thing is you're a generous spirit. And I picked up on that. It took me a while, but you said one thing to me that blew my mind.
Yeah.
I want to say back in, we were doing a blowout. I think it was probably 2006.
Right.
It was the first big one we did with you and Magic Dick and Jerry Portnoy.
Right.
And we were following the club owner back to, the club in Santa Cruz. And I was bitching about the club owner. I said, look at it. He's driving a BMW and I'm driving this piece of shit van or something. And he said, you don't know what's going on in his life.
That's right.
And it was like, that did a number on me. It made me think about how you look at people. And I think you have the ability to say things. The other thing is you've done things like gone to bat for me. We're doing one of my favorites is when we did the gig in Salem, Oregon. Lefty's Pizzeria, right.
And I told the guy.
Well, the best part of the story is he had a poster that had a squirrel playing a harmonica. Didn't bother, I don't even think, to have our names on it.
No.
It just said something like Mark Hummel's Harmonica Blowout and had a squirrel playing. He goes, "You're really gonna like the poster, Mark." And I said I was in shock. And then he tried to he basically embarrassed me in front of customers right before the show by storming and calling me an asshole in front of patrons.
Yeah, I didn't pay attention to that, but the thing I paid attention was, I didn't know who wrong or right and what the deal is. It's none of my business. I met you there, and you showed up with your vehicle and your trailer and musicians. You're on the road.
Yeah.
and it was time for lunch, and according to when I saw it, you were expected to get him to provide you lunch,
Right, to feed us.
to
Right.
feed you,
Right.
and
At a pizzeria video.
well, you were going to get fed,
Right.
and he was complaining and bitching right then, like he didn't want to feed you because there's no tickets that not been selling.
Right.
And then the other part to this, when I saw that, and then you got up and played, whether you ate or not, I don't remember, but I was sitting at the bar, waiting for me to get up, and while
Right.
you guys are playing, and he comes to sit next to me, and the dude says something like, start complaining about people not showed up, and you, and this and that, and then his wife is a brilliant marketing person. And so the first thing I said is that, well, I've been in business, I think, a lot longer than you, and I have to tell you two things that you've done wrong. One is, whether you're wrong or right, if you have a beef with a musician, you don't make them upset before they play. You can take care of the business after you play, not before they play.
Right.
That's number one.
Right.
Number two, I said, having a picture of a squirrel and not having a picture of the featured artist is not good marketing. And,
so much for brilliant marketing
and then
skills.
something else was said, and I finally said to him, I said, can I cuss? Can I
Yeah,
say
go ahead.
something?
Go ahead.
I said, I didn't come here to eat your fucking pizza. I came here to play with Mark Hummel. That's exactly what I said.
The best part is he used to have my picture like painted on the wall.
Oh.
And I bet he painted over that.
I don't know. As we know, there's no absolute truth. So what is the real truth? Everybody individually, the truth is how you care, and everybody cares differently. So there's different truths,
Yeah.
That's all.
Well, what I found knowing you all these years, and I found it, fairly early on, is that you speak your mind and you don't hold back. You say what's on your mind.
Well, yeah, but I also.
But you say it in a way that's, I think, respectful, and
I hope so.
Yeah.
Not only hope so, respectful, but I don't say without hearing the other person's opinion.
Right.
And I have no, even though I may seem very opinionated, I like to think of myself, if somebody says something that makes sense to me, I would never ever dish it. I would.
Right.
I mean, and I love to be proven that there's something different or added or whatever than what I believe. I mean, that's the magic. That's the same with music. I'm no prisoners. I don't want to deny any possibilities. I'm not afraid of. You can tell me any advice you have. I don't have to use it. If I use it, it's because it makes sense.
Yeah.
If I don't make sense, I don't use it.
I loved it when I came in yesterday and you and the bartender were having a conversation, and it was obvious that you guys had differences of opinion about some things. But the thing was, you guys carried on the civil conversation, and I just thought, this is what America is supposed to be.
What, anyway?
Yeah. But one of the things I really wanted to get into is just your history in terms of, because speaking of travel, I mean, your life has really been travel.
A lot of it.
I mean, so much of it. I mean, the fact that you made it to the United States from Denmark in this amazing story, her and her sister barely escaping from the concentration camp.
What happened was when the Nazis had all the killing camps, concentration camps, they want to get rid of the rest of the evidence because they were starting to lose now, and bombing from Americans that came in. So they were all in sync from all the death camps. These open graves they had made to march. Everybody was still alive and shoot them all and bury them because they didn't want the evidence. In that particular situation, bombing started.
Oh, okay.
And it even freaked the soldiers out and all that.
Yeah.
And then some people, not a lot, but some people managed to, and then they were being looked for, and my mother and my Aunt Judy ran across a Russian soldier who said, you better keep going because they're coming in.
Wow.
And then, that was unhorsed, this guy, and then they ended up in the church, and they didn't want to convert, and so they got scared and ran. Then they got to this house, a home.
This was in the north of Germany?
Yeah. Where when Poland, more
Okay.
like,
Cool.
where this woman was from the Gestapo, her husband was in the Gestapo, and she was using her place to bathe and feed the Nazi soldiers as they come through. And my mother, my Aunt Judy, had changed their first names to sound like the Russians. So they're not Jewish and Russian. They're safer.
Right.
They're just not liked because between the Russians and the Germans.
Yeah, right.
So they were slaves basically to this Nazi woman.
Right.
And then when they got more bombing started happening, she had to get out, and she had expected Denmark to be martial law by the Nazis, because the Nazis had dropped flyers and to occupy Denmark. And in Denmark at that time, when they dropped flyers that all Jews must wear Star David.
Everyone did.
Everybody in Denmark basically wore Star David.
Including the king, right?
Including basically saying, you as Germans don't tell us Danes who is who.
Right.
Okay? So when my mother and my Aunt Judy came, they were with this Nazi woman carrying suitcases and that. They got on a ship and they got torpedoed. Then they got rescued, and then they ended up in Copenhagen, and the Red Cross had liberated them. In the meantime, when the Nazis were threatening to walk in, and the King of Denmark couldn't stop them, one by one, little fishing boats that maybe can fit one person in there.
Right.
The rabbi of Denmark, Rabbi Melchior, was contacted by the king and said, "You better get as many of your congregation, as many people as possible, to get out and try to get over to Sweden, because Sweden was neutral."
Right.
And by the time my mother and my Judy there, all the Jews except for a few that got caught by the Nazis were already smuggled over one by one by the other Danish people in little boats. I mean, there was fears like they have a baby and it's crying, and the Nazis' ships were patrolling,
Right.
So it was very vulnerable to cross.
Yeah.
Now, what they did was on Rosh Hashanah, on the day that the Nazis knew that there's a high holiday for the Jews, on that day they thought they were going to be in the synagogue. That was the day that they said, let's use that, because they took the ship patrols away.
Jeez.
The Nazis, to maintain or something,
Yeah.
didn't think anybody's going to cross.
Right.
And so,
Wow.
yeah,
So that's how they did it.
So when my mom and my Aunt Judy told the Red Cross that she's a Nazi, that woman, and that all the Jews are dead, they said, "Oh no, the Jews are the Jews from Denmark are in Sweden. They're coming back."
Wow.
And my teacher, my rabbi was Ben Melchior. His father was the rabbi at that time.
You're saying in Denmark?
In Denmark.
Yeah.
Well, my school teacher was the son, who now is the rabbi there. Very wise man. And he said, in one of the comments, he said, "It's not the first time other some countries have helped in persecution, helped the Jews escape or get out. But it'll be the first time they're letting them back in."
Wow. Yeah, that's heavy.
So my father was first generation Danish, was a member of the social party, which is not communism.
So one question I had when you were growing up, was your mom was she depressed a lot because of it, or not really?
Horrific.
She was? Yeah. Yeah. I mean, how did that affect you as a child?
Well, that's a very good question, because it affected me. What people don't realize, and that's why I did my album Never Forget.
Right.
I have terrible fear of anti-Semitic. I'm proud of my heritage. I'm not a practiced Jew. I go to synagogue. I'm a cardiac Jew, I say. But I know my heritage,
Right.
and I have much respect and appreciations in what I've learned in my culture. When I came to the United States, I had left home. Basically, my parents didn't know where I was.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
I mean, I left
Yeah.
young. Because of Eric Burdon,
Right.
when I got with Eric Burdon in the war, then my uncle who lived in Canada, my mother always wanted to be with, because we found out in 1954 my uncle was still alive.
Wow.
Their brother.
Wow.
So, one thing to another, they found out that I was with this band. And my little brother, who's 5 years younger, came to Milwaukee at an Eric Burdon Wall concert. And he,
How crazy.
and you know, when I left, and he was just a little kid, and I used to hold his hand like we were that bonded. So I can imagine how devastating it could be even for my brother. You know, I've never even talked to him about it, but it, you know, that thing. It's just horrific. The lens it filters through, and what it did to me too. But when I heard my brother, when I heard this person's voice say Oskar, because most people don't call me Oskar, right? It was like, and it was right after I played Mother Earth, after solo near Mother Earth and Lee Oskar. And after the show, I jumped off stage, and that was my brother. Some years later, and so we hanged out for a few days.
That is so crazy.
Picked up a couple of girls, and we had a great time. And then
now, was he living in Toronto?
Yeah.
Wow.
And then I had to have the nerve to call my parents. And it was like God, the hardest thing.
Yeah, that must have been really traumatic.
And my mother, when she answered the phone and she heard my voice, she would say, you could hear like an echo, Oskar. And she said, please don't think we're mad at you.
Wow. Yeah, it's heavy stuff, man. Very heavy stuff. So what I wanted to get into is you moved from, I think you came to New York, you said first, and then how did you get to San Francisco?
Well,
did you hitchhike or?
No. After I was up in Toronto, I met some people, and I wanted to go to Haight-Ashbury.
Right.
Because I heard that Haight-Ashbury you can find a place to sleep. Right. And then I can go. Then it'd be real close to Los Angeles, where maybe I can get a record deal.
Oh, okay. That's super ambitious.
Didn't know how far it was apart.
Right. That's amazing.
So when I came to, we drove to Haight-Ashbury. And
now
then,
from Toronto?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, I didn't realize.
Yeah. And then they dropped me off. Everybody kind of just, I don't know what happened, but I got off, and that's when right in front of a Tracy's Donut Shop.
Right. That's where you met Spade? What was
that's my Super Spade.
Spade.
But I always wanted I loved the donuts, and I had I think a nickel or 10 cents on me. Whatever it cost, I had enough.
I used to go there too, man.
Tracy's Donut Shop?
Yeah, I sure did. I used to go in there and have a donut and coffee all the time. Man. Every time I went to the Hague.
Yeah. So I went in. So I didn't get in. I got to the door, about to walk in, and that's when this guy comes up to me and says, "How you doing, man?" or something like that. And I said, "Okay, what's your name?" And I said, "Lee Oskar from Denmark. I play harmonica." You know, with whatever English I could do. He says, "My name is Super Spade." I said, "Nice to meet you. Come with me." So I followed him, and that's when we went down to Haight-Ashbury. And at that time, Haight-Ashbury, the store in the corner there was a drugstore.
Right. Now, what year was this? 67?
67.
Okay.
Yeah, 67.
Right.
So I went with him to the back of the drugstore, and he holds up a bottle, one of these bottles of saccharin,
Saccharin,
which I didn't know it was.
Right.
And he's kind of telling me that these tablets look like LSD, like Owsley acid.
Right.
Yeah, because I knew the name already,
Yeah.
so he's telling me that. And so he's telling me something like his friends got burned, bought some drugs that were not the right drugs. So, people were burning each other back to the drugs.
Right.
And you can't go to the police and say, "Hey, man, I gave the guy money," and it's bunk, right? You know. So anyhow, he was telling me that he's going to sell these as if it's LSD to these people who had burned his friends.
Right.
And apparently he was a dealer himself too, which, I didn't know that. And so after he explained that, I finally walked away, and I walked back to want to get my donut. Mm-hmm. And when I get there, this time the police, "Hey, you!" And I turn around and, "Yeah, you." And then pushed me against the car and checked me out. And they said, "We told you to move 15 minutes ago." And of course, they've got the wrong guy. Right. I didn't know so they're arresting me. And they're arguing, the two cops are arguing. And one cop is Arthur Garance, batch number 624. I'll never forget. The other guy, I never got the name.
Yeah.
But this guy, Arthur Garance, was arguing with the other cop and what to arrest me on. Because they had been arresting all these kids, apparently, every day for public nuisance and loitering, the 370 penal code.
Wow.
And I didn't know, I've been in the streets and I've seen terrible things. They got the wrong guy, and I'm scared, right?
Right.
And when I got to Park Station in San Francisco, the other dude sees my Danish passport and he said something like, "I'm sorry, we picked you." And then he said, "You have 3 phone calls to make." And so I said, I don't know anybody here. I'm in Denmark. I don't know what. And
So were they arresting you at that point?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they give me the phone book, and I look up Tracy Stoner's show, and I find it. So I called to see if anybody knew Super Spade.
Oh my God.
And when I called the phone, the answer, this dude that answered, "Excuse me, do you know Super Spade?" He says, "Yeah, that's me." Because that was a payphone. That's the back then,
okay.
which we don't. Do you remember?
Right, sure.
Back then, yeah, the number
Yeah.
to.
So that was probably his office.
Yeah, so that was, and that number for the
Yeah.
Tracy's Donor Shop, that's the phone number, and it's on the payphone.
How funny.
Yeah,
That's
so
weird.
so he was talking from that phone normally, and I don't know if that connected with Arthur Gans. Them they were seeing me following Super Spade
Yeah.
or whatever it is, but they were arresting kids before me, after me, constantly. So Super Spade was something about it. I said, "I'm in jail," so he says, "I'll take care of you." And I was so upset that night. I was yelling in Danish and English. I was just. I didn't know why I was in.
Super Spade said he'd take care of you?
Yeah.
And he got you out?
And next morning, a bail bondsman bailed me out.
Wow.
And so after I got bailed out, whatever I did that day, the process and all that, by the time I got out, I walked, tried to hitchhike, and most of it I ended up walking, got to Haight-Ashbury. I didn't see anybody, just find a place to crash. I don't even know what I did. Every day I was like, find a place to sleep on a bench or somewhere. And the next day, I ran into a couple of people that I already had met, that I had seen, and they said Super Spade got the front page newspaper.
Wow.
Was his real name was Bill Thomas. I didn't know what Spade meant then either. I didn't. I think that was his name, and he had been cut up in pieces, so and thrown over Stannion, that hill over there. So apparently the people I imagine that he was telling me he was going to sell this to was.
And they murdered him.
They killed him, and
now didn't it turn out that Rick Estrin knew that guy too?
Rick Estrin
Right.
know Super Spade too.
Right.
Yeah, only a few people, and it was amazing. I mean, I could never. I wanted to thank him, but he was gone.
Yeah.
But then I had to go to. I had to go to court. And Arthur Garens was threatening because I didn't plead guilty.
Because you did not.
I did not.
Yeah. Right.
Judge Kennedy, a black judge, and Mrs. Doodle was the public defender. And they told me, "You got to go and see the public defender." So I got there real early and nothing was open. Open 15 minutes or 10 minutes before the court. So nobody knows what really happened. I couldn't explain.
Right.
So how can she defend me?
Right. Yeah.
So I'm yelling in court while and she says to me something like, "You're going to be arrested public," and I yelled at her too.
Yeah.
I yelled at everybody. and the Judge Kennedy.
Must have gone over great.
No, the Judge Kennedy was digging it.
Was he?
Because he was fed up, obviously.
Oh, because you were standing up for yourself.
Not only that.
Yeah.
No, because he's got all these kids arrested by the same cop for the same thing, that he knew something was wrong.
He knew something was
and
wrong.
all the parents would have the kids plead guilty, and I pleaded not guilty.
Yeah.
So because he says, "You plead guilty or not guilty?" I said, I don't know what I did wrong.
Yeah.
So he says, "You have 90 days or something to get a." So I went to American Civil Liberties Union.
Okay.
Danish consulate.
Yeah.
Had
Wow.
five attorneys
Wow.
represent me because my case was a case they could use when all the other kids had pleaded guilty.
Wow.
Yeah.
How wild.
Yeah.
From San Francisco, you weren't there that long, is that right?
I was there a year because
Oh,
I
you
had
were
to,
there
because
for a
I had to
year.
wait for
Okay.
the
Oh, right.
I had
The
to wait
case.
for the case.
Right.
I went from municipal code to civil to all these things,
Okay.
and ended up back with the same judge, and he said dismissed a year later.
Wow.
And then when he's dismissed, he says, anytime you're around, you can come have a coffee with me.
Wow.
He said, and the feds, or not the feds, the immigration didn't show up. I was scared of that because I was really illegally now in the country.
Right.
But 6 months before, while I was doing the case, they came and to question that, and my attorneys, Richard Wittheimer, the people from from Civil Liberties Union.
Right.
They had some reason to say that they can't touch me because how I came here and my situation of being arrested. And after the case, and when the case was over, I was like, I had the fear they were going to deport me.
I'm going to get the hell out of here.
No, I'm going to get deported. I mean, how are you going?
Yeah,
They're waiting for me, right?
Wow.
Nothing happened, and thank God. Yeah.
So when you were in the Haight at this time, to me is
The
really
Love-In.
interesting.
The Love-In.
Love-In. You were from '67 during the Love-Ins to '68 when the drugs hit the streets and things really got overly crowded, but also
I mean, the Love-In was freaky to me because you got to remember, first of all, I'd just been arrested. Dudes came up to me and said, "Hey, you want to go to a party?" I said, "Sure." So they gave me the address up in Oakland.
Right.
And that was the Black Panthers.
Wow.
It was what's his name now?
Huey Newton.
Huey Newton.
Yeah.
I didn't know Black Panther, nothing, and I think maybe they were just setting me up to make fun of me. I don't know why. It's a party, okay. So I hitchhiked all the way up to Oakland Hills. When I get to the house, this little house, there's all these people in there. I walked in and I just surrounded all these people that are dancing, having a good time, and I started dancing. and I probably looked like the goofiest guy dancing. And I can imagine if I was looking at that funny hippie guy,
funny
right?
hippie dude.
But because I had no fear, I didn't even know what Huey Newton. I had no idea about the Black Panther. I didn't know anything.
Yeah.
That was the party. Okay.
The whole racial thing was still
and
oblivious.
right.
You're oblivious.
Right.